So now we talked in the first video. We talked about your journey and how did you start programming, and you changed a lot of times between Australia and back to London, going to Australia and back now to Europe again. You're back to Europe, right? Welcome back.
Soon.
Welcome
Amsterdam
back.
in a few weeks. So yeah.
Okay, and so what did you start programming with?
When I studied or when I worked?
Whenever you want. What was the first programming language you used ever? You know, like,
ever?
Yeah,
I remember. So
not Flash. You're too young for that.
No. The first line of code that I wrote, I think, was in processing. It's like more of like a graphical programming language, but that was when I just did an exchange at uni. So it was.
See, I'm nodding because I don't know what is it. So I'm acting as a
but it was not production.
Okay.
In production websites, Ruby was the backend. At some point, Ruby was still trendy.
That's so it works.
It's like, yes.
So it works. Oh, yeah. So it works. Ruby. I know that.
Yeah. So at the time, I was writing Ruby. I haven't written Ruby in a while. And in the front end, it was Angular 1.
Oh,
I know.
Scary. I would say.
I have not touched Angular since then neither. So it's how things changed.
Wow, Ruby and Angular. Was it a famous kind of stack back then?
I remember 5 years ago, Ruby was quite trendy in the backend.
Rails was,
Rails. And Angular 1 started. There was no React at the time. Only 5 years ago, you know, there was no React.
Trust me, I know that because we reinvented React, and I'm regretting it every single day in the product. We're migrating everything now because we had to do that.
Yeah,
we didn't have that confidence in Angular back then. It was way too complex, and then we did our own thing, internal thing for our product because we wanted to be reactive on the client side, and then React happened like 2 years after.
Yeah, I don't even remember the first time I wrote React, but I remember Angular 1 because when I studied and I did my bootcamp, we only studied vanilla JavaScript, so I didn't really know how to use a framework at the time. And then when I started at ThoughtWorks, and my first project was for a startup, we were building their website from scratch. So we kind of picked the tooling, and my team picked Angular. So it was Angular 1. There was no Angular 2 as well at the time. And I think I used Prismic actually at the time, very shortly. Yeah.
Wow.
And the backend was in Ruby. So that was
that's what works. Okay.
Yeah.
But we talk a lot about Angular 1, but maybe it started all. This client-side application. It was kind of one of the first to try to address that. It was maybe too ambitious, right? Angular 1, if we can call it that way. That kind of two-way binding.
Yeah,
was way too complex.
Well, because then I think from Angular 2 they kind of changed that.
Yeah,
right? I haven't used after 1. I did. I think it's Angular 7 now or something.
I don't know.
I missed so many steps. But yeah, because now after Angular 1, I think, very soon after I started using React, and then I don't think once I tried Ember, I didn't really like it. Ember was like, I didn't understand it. But I think since then, it's been React most of the time.
So, no Vue.
I know I haven't tried Vue. I really wanted to try, but I think then it's like when you're a consultant, usually you kind of have to, you pick as a team, and also if you build something for a client, you have to make sure that it's supported enough, that there's enough of a community around. So I think most of the time people were picking React because a lot more people look into React. There's more documentation, more answers on Stack Overflow. So unfortunately, I haven't tried Vue, but I've heard a lot of great things. So...
Yeah,
maybe.
from our clients, we often hear about Vue and React.
Yeah.
Sometimes we hear about Angular. I don't know. Maybe I should be ashamed we're not supporting it enough.
Yeah.
We should do a better job at supporting Angular. It's JavaScript, so it works very well, but just we don't have as much dedicated documentation for it.
Yeah.
But what's happening with React and Vue is... it's moving. It's like so many things that are happening. Gatsby, Next, Nuxt, and things keep coming out, and we see like there is a huge progress now in these kind of.
I don't know enough about Vue to understand the fight that people have between React and Vue. Like some people are really like React is so much better than Vue, but I don't know enough about Vue to actually have an opinion, and that's why sometimes I really wish I had the opportunity to work with it on a production website. Because if I redo my portfolio in Vue, I don't think it gives me as well a good enough understanding of the framework.
But mostly people, I guess, they argue that Vue is easier to start with.
Okay.
Because you start with your HTML and then slowly you transfer things into components. Whereas React, you need to go upfront into the React way. And maybe maybe if you do a portfolio, you'll get that impression of like, oh, okay, it's the learning curve is easier. But once you get into the core of it, I guess more or less the same.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
There are some good things there, good things there.
People have always strong opinions. So like whatever my team wants to use, I'll use it. But yeah.
So you started with Angular and Rails, and then you moved to React.
Yes, I think quite. And at some point there was. I think at that time also companies started to have JavaScript in like the full stack, so it was React and Node, and then slowly I kind of pivoted towards only front end. So then mainly React, yes. But yeah.
No, go ahead.
No,
okay.
I was just thinking.
And you moved to front end. So what do you do on the front end? Like what kind of projects you do on the front end?
Like you mean?
Anything like what like is it basically it was at Atlassian, did you use React?
Yes, it's heavily React, yeah.
So you did the front end and then you communicate with the back end team on the API or something like that?
So there I haven't really been exposed to a part of the code where I have to do that. I think at the moment it was more creating. So you create a new feature. So I just create a new component following the design system. It's called Atlaskit, and I haven't had to integrate anything yet with the backend or APIs and things like that. Because the thing with React, a lot of things are reusable. So I can create something new, but I'll usually reuse something that has been used somewhere else in the code base. I haven't had to do any new integration at the moment, so I just know that the backend is in Java. But sometimes when you have a product or a company that's that big, there's a lot of times where for a long time you will never have to touch another part of the code base. So it's mainly been just React components following the design.
So you're saying you didn't try other technologies than React? I mean, especially if we're talking about Vue here, so you can't compare. But what are the things that you like about React since you started working with it?
Well, to me, I find it a lot easier to... I find it quite fast to work with, but maybe it's because I've done it for a few years now. I don't remember what it's like, again, to look at it from a beginner point of view. But now, the fact that, it's reusable a lot, so you don't have to... once you write your code once, you can just reuse it a lot of times in your code base, so you kind of save time, and you things are quite separate, so usually your components shouldn't be too big as well. So I feel like it helps you to create a code base that's a bit cleaner, or it's supposed to be a bit cleaner, where you're separate things, and it makes it easier not only for you but for developers coming after you to be able to just import your component and then get started, build their components a lot faster as well. So I find it just nicer to work on things as a team.
As a team, yeah. Okay.
I think to me it's helped a lot. I mean, when I see it in Jira, when you're building something, you can see already, even when I look at a design, I can see already where I can use something that's been there before, so we can just deliver faster.
So you already think in terms of components when
I've noticed that now. It's like in my mind everything is a component, so I don't know if it's a good thing to think that way, but because now it makes me feel like
it's a hammer.
Well, it's like,
everything is a nail.
Yeah. Or it's also, now I'm thinking the React way kind of thing, because now even if you don't use React, but now you have the web components. I haven't actually used that, but now I feel like everything is a component, and I wouldn't remember what it's like not to have React and to think about a different way. I mean, even with Angular before it was a bit different, I feel.
But it's useful to have because, I guess maybe the question is that can you imagine yourself going back to vanilla.js and working with components?
I do a lot of vanilla.js on my side project because I really like vanilla.js, but I know that it wouldn't scale. And even when I've tried to build a few things, just rebuilding components, but in vanilla.js, you can quickly see that if you don't have any kind of like state management, you will very quickly you'll struggle to grow. So that's why in my prototypes on side projects, I don't really use a framework because I feel like I would spend most of my time setting up the framework rather than building the prototype. But on production code, I wouldn't see myself doing just vanilla.js without any framework.
And how do you deal with CSS? When you're working with React, I mean, so many schools, so many people telling different ways to deal with CSS. How would you deal with that?
To me, it's like I don't really have strong opinions about how you write things, but I know that some people will fight for CSS in JS and CSS and JS. To me, I adopt whatever the code base already has, and if the team decides to change.
Come on, you have your opinion. Stop saying.
Well, okay. So between CSS in JS and CSS and JS, I like to separate them. To me, I don't really like to have my CSS in my JavaScript because usually I feel like you end up with files that could be just too long and it's a bit difficult to understand. I like to have them separate, like in separate files, but I know that in the Jira code base, you sometimes kind of have a mix of both actually. But I wouldn't fight somebody because they put their CSS in.
We understood that. You're nice one to
But
live
to me,
with.
it's more about I just like when you can see that people spent a bit of time at least trying to write their CSS, or that you can see that they cared about it and they didn't just put whatever in a file and be like, that's.
But like, how about like, do you like thinking also CSS in terms of components, or should it be global, or should it be in between? Should it be both?
I think about it in terms of components as well, because as you grow, I think if you don't separate them and if you don't structure your CSS in components, then you will have some kind of conflicts and
when you share things, right? When you start sharing things.
And then if you have a style somewhere that clashes with something else and you don't actually separate them, it's going to be very hard to know where you need to fix the issue. I feel like sometimes I've seen things in a code base where you can see that people have tried to like patch things in the CSS to try and fix what's been going wrong. But then you have sometimes some challenging problems where I know that in Jira at some point I was fixing a little style issue on my part of my component. But the thing is, when you share components inside like a very big application like Jira, I realized, I modified the style because it was good for my component, but actually you don't know if it's going to be used somewhere else. And even
if it's a bug, maybe some people base their code on the bug that
and
you
the thing
had.
is that, right now I wouldn't know how I would fix it, but I'm like, okay, I fixed it for me, and I checked that where I knew it was used somewhere else in the code base, I saw that nothing was wrong. But if somebody all of a sudden imports the component and uses it a bit of a different way, and they don't actually check that it doesn't break anywhere else, then you have that kind of issue as well. So.
Right.
But I mean, like,
it's very tricky. It's very tricky.
I
to
wouldn't
deal
have an answer over how to fix that, but it's an interesting thing to see as well. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Maybe like you're speaking at dotJS. Is it tomorrow or after tomorrow? The day after?
It's on Friday. So
on Friday.
Yeah, whatever day it is today.
Wednesday today is. Do you believe
Is it
me?
Wednesday?
No, it's not.
Okay, all right.
It's Tuesday.
Okay. Well, maybe in Australia it's Wednesday, so yeah.
Yeah, there's that as well.
Technically.
So what will be your talk about? You're not allowed to say, right?
No, I'm not allowed to say it. Okay,
No.
I'm not going to say what it is, but it has to do with machine learning and JavaScript, but I will not tell you exactly in what way I'm using it.
Okay, that's cool. But in the next video we talk about machine learning and JavaScript.
Okay.